The Secretary of Homeland Security continues to maintain that our southern border is secure. This is obviously not true. Hundreds of thousands of people are crossing our southern border every single month. The vast majority of them will end up basically being released into the United States after a certain period of time, because when they come to the border, then we give them a piece of paper that says that you have to have your asylum claim adjudicated, at which point they are released into the interior. Some come back for their first appointment. Many never come back for their second appointment. Hundreds of thousands of people every month, and that's not including the people who just entered the border and were never caught by Border Patrol in the first place. The Biden administration continues to claim through gritted teeth that everything is fine at the border. Everyone knows things are not fine at the border, and this has very serious consequences for the United States, not only in terms of our fiscal future, in terms of crime, in terms of electoral demographics, because eventually, you imagine, Democrats will attempt to amnesty a lot of these people who have violated the law. Now, as I've always said, I don't blame people for attempting to get into the United States. This is the greatest country on the face of the planet. Why wouldn't you try to get in if you could? The real question is whether the United States is a sovereign country that controls its own border. The Democrats apparently have decided they no longer wish for the United States to be a sovereign country that controls its own border, because to understand where Joe Biden is on this issue, you have to understand where Joe Biden has been. Joe Biden, as always, is a bellwether inside the Democratic Party. He's just a weather vane. He does not have opinions of his own. The opinions he does have of his own tend to be very, very wrong, but he just follows the base of the Democratic Party wherever it leads, which is why during the Democratic primaries in 2020, he was slightly more moderate than Bernie Sanders, but then he immediately swiveled and became more left-wing the minute that he gained power, because the Democratic base wanted him to be more left-wing. Joe Biden is not a sentient being on his own. He is animated by the desires of the median voter inside the Democratic Party. And this is why, if you look at his evolution on illegal immigration, it's extraordinarily clear how the Democratic Party has morphed. So, for example, in 1996, Joe Biden is one of the biggest backers of a bill that is now remembered by Democrats as something horrible, right? It's sort of like Joe Biden on crime. In 1994, Joe Biden supported this crime bill, which was extraordinarily effective in lowering crime across the United States. Then, by 2020, he had to run against the crime bill because the Democratic Party had decided that police were bad. Well, same thing happened with illegal immigration. In 1996, according to Vox.com, not a right-wing source, President Bill Clinton signed a bill that overhauled immigration enforcement in the United States and laid the groundwork for the massive deportation machine that exists today. The 1996 immigration bill continues to control a lot of our immigration law. It was supported by Joe Biden. So this particular bill handled how Border Patrol was supposed to deal with this. The immigration law was called the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act, pronounced IRA. And some of the most significant portions of the law is that it made more people eligible for deportation. If you were convicted of certain crimes, you are eligible for deportation. But in 1996, Congress expanded the crimes which made an immigrant eligible for deportation, and they made those changes retroactive. It got easier to deport people. Immigrants who were convicted of crimes weren't the only ones stripped of the ability to argue their case before a judge before getting deported. Anybody apprehended within 100 miles of the border could be sent before a judge. And IRA required the government to hold more immigrants in detention before deporting them, making it harder for them to get lawyers in the first place. It also made it a lot harder for unauthorized immigrants to get legal. Before 1996, immigrants who had been in the United States for at least 7 years could get legal status as long as they showed it would cause them extreme hardship to get deported. IRA made it a lot harder. It limited cancellation of removal to immigrants who had been in the United States for at least 10 years. Instead of having to show that the immigrant would suffer extreme hardship if deported, the immigrant would now have to show that a U.S. citizen would suffer exceptional and extremely unusual hardship, which sounds more like DACA, right? And the U.S. could only grant this to 3,000 immigrants per year. So this led to a massive spike in deportations. You can see it in the stats. The number of Mexicans deported from the United States rose from somewhere around 25,000 in 1994, 1995 to 150,000 by 1998, 1999 because of this particular law. This was supported by Joe Biden, who, as I say, used to be a border hawk. The simple fact that Joe Biden used to be a border hawk is again, indicative of how far left the Democratic Party overall has moved. And he stayed a border hawk all the way up until about 2006. Right? In 2006, here is Joe Biden explaining that it was important. He did a full immigration speech in which Joe Biden said, we needed to tighten the border with fences. There must be fences. Not Donald Trump, Joe Biden, 2006, not all that long ago. And talked about illegal drugs flowing from the erstwhile democracy of Mexico. This sounds a lot like Donald Trump circa 2016.
The country that is an erstwhile democracy where they have the greatest disparity in wealth. It's one of the wealthiest countries in the hemisphere. I voted for a fence. I voted, unlike most Democrats, and some of you won't like it, I voted for 700-mile fence. People are driving across that border with tons, hear me, tons of everything from byproducts from methamphetamine to cocaine to heroin. And it's all coming up through corrupt Mexico.
Who does that sound like right there? Joe Biden, circa 2006. I'm for building 700 miles of fence. There are tons of the prerequisites for meth coming up through that Mexican border, through the corrupt Mexican government. They're not sending their best. Who does that sound like? That was Joe Biden circa 2006, because the Democrats didn't used to be this radical on illegal immigration. In fact, in 2007, Joe Biden, who was then running for president, said, let's send the employers of illegal immigrants to prison. If you employ an illegal immigrant, you should go to jail, says Joe Biden.
We got to get tougher with employers. If they, in fact, the person you should send to jail is not the illegal, you should send to jail the employer. If you knowingly hire an illegal alien, then you should be held accountable.
Again, sounds pretty hawkish on immigration. In fact, in 2008, a year later, he said he opposed giving driver's licenses to illegal immigrants.
Undocumented people in this country, should they be able to get driver's licenses? Senator Biden?
No. Okay, so that was Joe Biden up until about 2008. Then he became the vice presidential candidate under Barack Obama, and he immediately swiveled. So for the first couple of years, Barack Obama didn't seem too loose on the border. Then, in 2012, you started to see a major upswing in illegal immigration brought on by the fact that Joe Biden and Barack Obama decided that if you were a dreamer, meaning you were somebody who's brought here as a minor, then you would not be deported. There would be deferred action for childhood arrivals. And in fact, the entire Obama administration, which is a very radical administration, was predicated on the idea that there should not be deportations of illegal immigrants. Remember, in 2012, Barack Obama ran on the notion that Mitt Romney was too harsh on immigration, because Mitt Romney's proposal was that a lot of people would, quote unquote, self-deport if you didn't give them benefits. So by 2015, Joe Biden and Barack Obama were meeting with dreamers. And suddenly, Barack Obama and Joe Biden, because Barack Obama was the center of the Democratic Party, he was the lodestar around which the Democratic Party moved, Joe Biden swiveled from border hawk to border dove. Here was Joe Biden hanging out with Barack Obama in 2015 with the dreamers.
My parents, they have two small businesses in Southern California. They have dry cleaners. We're very involved with our community. We're very involved with our church. My mom is actually the vice president of the women's club at our park. All we want to have is that opportunity to fully give back to this country.
You guys remind us why not only this issue is so important, but you remind me of what's best about this country and why we need to fight for the values that make this a special place.
And Joe Biden sitting there nodding along to something that presumably he would have disagreed with about 10 years before. Well, that is typical Joe Biden. It's also important to recognize here why Obama did this in 2012. It was June 2012 when Obama announced DACA. The reason that he did it is because he was trying to cobble together the intersectional coalition, and so he was trying to hand out goodies to as many intersectional groups as he thought he could identify. Now, it turns out Hispanics are not able to be pandered to this way. The notion that Hispanics are widely in favor of illegal immigration is just not true. By polling data, Hispanics don't particularly like illegal immigration. But the Joe Biden, who represents the center of the Democratic Party, continues to move to the left. By the time he hit 2018, he's ripping Donald Trump's border policy as one of the darkest moments in American history, one of the worst things happening in America. Right? This is the kids in cages era of American political media. Remember that because of a consent decree that was undertaken during the Obama era, you could no longer hold parents and children together in detention. And so what this meant is that you had to separate the parents from the kids, and you had to keep the kids in certain facilities if you couldn't give them to family members and all the rest of this. Under Obama, right, under the Flores settlement. And suddenly this became Donald Trump's fault because he said, I'm not just going to release the parents with the kids into the interior of the United States. Here was Joe Biden, who used to say we need a 700-mile fence. We need to arrest employers who hire illegal immigrants. There's drugs flowing up through the border. Now saying that it's one of the worst things in human history that Donald Trump is harsh on the border.
This administration's policy that literally ripped babies from the arms of their mothers and fathers. One of the darkest moments in our history. Our reputation is being tarnished around the world. Not only is it a national shame, it tarnishes the very idea of America.
It tarnishes the idea of America, by the way. I should note at this point, that was 2018. July 17th, 2022, as of that date, there were 443 kids without parents who came across the border. There were over 11,600 children who were being held by the feds. The United States was expecting up to 161,000 single minors to cross the border in 2022. In 2014, which was a major immigration crisis in the United States, that number was 68,000. Today, it's almost triple that under Joe Biden. Okay, so important to recognize Joe Biden's massive evolution on this issue. And so all of the policies that he has undertaken are geared toward broader illegal immigration now, because the Democratic Party has basically decided that the border must never be enforced for political reasons. Because ideologically speaking, borders are bad. Ideologically speaking, borders are exclusive. Ideologically speaking, everyone who wants to get in should be able to get in, particularly if a lot of those people tend to hold the same sort of values with regard to government interventionism as Democrats like. I mean, why not? I'm searching for another explanation as to why they're so soft on the border. Can you give me one? Democrats cannot. Instead, they just lie to you. They say the border is safe, everything is fine, but they know that it's not. So what is the political reason for doing this other than there must be some sort of political or ideological gain? The battle for the culture is heating up. We here at the Daily Wire are making some big moves. So be sure to like, subscribe, ring that bell, because you're not going to want to miss a single moment.